Hi there. I'm early, which is usually the case. um, I wanted to speak today about our relationships in lockdown, in quarantine, isolation, whatever you want to call it, and what's happening for a lot of people. And you might be one of these people who's experiencing a lot of challenge in your relationship right now. And this might be, you might be the kind of person who has a challenging relationship anyway, or you might be the kind of person who doesn't normally. I would hazard a guess that the vast majority of people are finding that at this time, whatever issues you have had in the past are being exacerbated and magnified. And, we don't need to be a brain surgeon to see why that's happening. But I do want to speak to it a little bit because it's really hard, and it's potentially damaging both to ourselves but also to our relationship. And what can we do about it? Well, firstly, we need to understand why it's happening. And we're in a very interesting situation. We're in social isolation, and what is this causing for us, just on a basic level? We're cut off from all of our, among other things, we're cut off from a lot of distractions. So aspects of ourself and aspects of our relationship that we're otherwise able to avoid or hide from are going to come to the surface. That's just a reality. Now, a lot of people are talking about this time in isolation as a gift, and I do believe it is. We're certainly at a point now where we've been in isolation for long enough that a lot of people are not thinking of it as a gift anymore, and that's understandable because, we've had a rest. We've been able to kind of disconnect from all of the demands we have on ourselves. And now we're at that point where we're actually probably feeling a bit bored or a bit frustrated, or something that a bit deeper is happening. And that is that the things that we often hide from within ourselves, as I said, or within our relationships, are now coming to the surface. And this is actually a very, very helpful and a really poignant gift to us. That, when utilized well, will help us to grow both as individuals but also within our relationship. Now, if you're listening to this, then you're interested in my work, and so I can assume that you are the kind of person who understands that relationships are a place for growth. And so you're not always going to be looking for the easy way out. But if you're familiar with my work, you'll also know that I really advocate for relationships being a nice place to be. Let me use a better word than nice. It should be a place where you come home for rest. It should be a place where you come home to feel a sanctuary. Yes, we're going to have difficulty in our relationships. That's normal, but it should be more restful and peaceful and loving and kind than stressful. Now, let's just get some perspective, though, that whilst we're in isolation, you're with your partner 24/7. Now, if you've ever studied or followed things like astrology, you'll see that I find this really interesting. That, I'm not going to give you an astrology lesson right now, but just really briefly, in astrology, there's 12 houses, and the seventh house is the house of relationships. What that means is it's the area of your life that governs your relationships and what they're like. But I found this really interesting. This was a long time ago, 25 years ago. I discovered that originally that house was called the house of open enemies. And that's where our partners are. So what the hell, right? Like, what the... But this is really telling. What is an open enemy? I mean, what's the difference between an open enemy and a regular enemy? Well, an open enemy is someone with whom you're intimate with. It's someone whom you're intimate with and open with. So you're disclosed with. There's no sort of hidden agendas. And it's a place where the reason it's called an enemy is because they can often be in opposition to you. So if your relationship is a place that will show you the things that are the things that you don't want to see. Nobody's going to be new to this idea that your relationship is a mirror for yourself, but that's really easily said. And I know a lot of my clients are extremely evolved and awake people, and those of us who, think, yeah, I know. And, I know that when I'm triggered, it's because, my partner or the person is doing something that I'm not looking at in myself. But it can often be a lot easier said than done. When we're in this isolation situation, you really are going to be seeing your stuff. And what we need to understand is that it's not as simple as what a lot of people make it out to be. Let's say, for instance, my husband, what does he do? What's something that he does that pisses me off? I mean, don't get me wrong, there's lots of things he does that piss me off. I'm just trying to think of one that I want to share with you right now. Okay, so one of the things that he does, that's not true. He doesn't do too many things. One of the things that he does that pisses me off is when he does the dishes, let's say, and he's a really good one. So last night he made dinner. It's his night on Wednesday nights to make dinner, and he made fish, which was great. I love fish, and I don't eat lots of other types of carbohydrates. I do eat sweet potato, and the last time he made fish, I made a special request: when you make fish, could you make me sweet potato? And he said, yep, sure. And then last night I sat down to dinner and there was fish and salad, and I'm like, the boys got corn and all sorts of things, and I'm like, do you remember? Now, it pissed me off. Why did it piss me off? It pissed me off because he didn't remember. It pissed me off because I felt like he didn't care enough to remember me. Oh, poor me. I was a victim. I was, missing out here. Now, how is that a trigger for me? Is that actually that he's a mean guy, or is that a trigger for me? Yes, it's a trigger for me, obviously. But what does it mean? What does that mean that it's a trigger for me? A lot of the times we say, well, where is it that I'm not being, thoughtful to him? And that's really simple. That's a really superficial kind of approach to what someone triggers in me. And that's great. If that's where you want to go with it and learn about yourself, and that's great, and you can go there. What I want to talk about is, how do we have those experiences within our relationship? And yes, if you want to learn about yourself from it, then that's wonderful, and I highly recommend that. But how do we move even beyond that and back to love? Because ultimately, that's where we want to go. And ultimately, if we're able to move back to love with our partner, then we heal whatever it is within ourselves anyway. Now, this kind of path is not for the faint-hearted. This path is the razor edge path, because you need to really, really want to love your partner. And the thing is that so many people, hi Martia, hi Bruce, so many people think that love is something that happens to you, and that it's like this magical experience that just happens and you're lucky to have it or not. And to be honest, that's bullshit. Chemical attraction happens to you, when there's a great DNA match or what have you, and that's wonderful. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's a great thing. But love is a choice. Love is truly a choice. So, those feelings of love and kindness and positive regard that you have for a person in the beginning, as you know, they fade. And so we need to choose to love our partner. So you need to really, really, really want to love them, to be able to keep loving them when you're in this isolated situation where they keep on bringing up things within yourself that you don't like, that make you feel uncomfortable, that make you feel uneasy. Now, if any of you are watching and have done my work, you'll know that there's a real depth of how to have a healthy relationship, to communicate well, to share your feelings from a healthy place, all that kind of stuff. Then there is a massive place for that. But what I want to talk about right now is how to stop being frustrated with your partner, how to come back to love in the moment. And so, coming back to my example of when he pissed me off, I could have gotten pissed off with him and I could have acted on that response. But I've reminded myself, I've set a precedent for myself that I'm here to love him. And this is very different to what the majority of people in our culture think of when they think of love. Even the majority of relationship coaches and therapists and what have you talk about how can I feel loved? How can I feel safe? And all that kind of stuff. But what I want to talk about is how to get over being frustrated with your partner and come back to love. Now, of course, if your partner is abusive and there's some extreme damage going on in your relationship, then you know that is the case for you, and this is not going to fix that. This is for those of us who are in relationships with people who are kind, good people, but who piss us off. And we know that we want to be in relationship with them and that it's healthy to be in relationship with them, but we ask ourselves, how can I, when everything he does makes me angry, or she, everything they do makes me just turn off them and feel that they're awful and they're stupid. You need to remember that this is about you loving them. You need to choose to love them. When you choose as an overall general choice, I am here to love this person, it changes the whole dynamic. Now, if any of you are parents, you'll understand that entirely because you love your children. That's the one type of love that I think we kind of never have to work at, except we have to, except for the moments when you just want to kill them, they can really, really get to you. But the thing is, you always remember how much you love them, and so you find a way through it. So it's the same with your partner, and especially at the moment in isolation. You can do all of the self-development, and as I say, do that. That's great. It's a wonderful opportunity to do so. But let this be an opportunity for you to grow spiritually and emotionally as a couple. Now, you don't need to get your partner on board to do this. You don't need to say to them, well, I'm going to start loving you, so you need to start loving me. That's not how it works. What I urge you to try is to right now say, I am going to make it my job to love my partner. That's going to be my job from now on. So how can I love them? And make that decision. And then in the moment when they're triggering you, remember that it's your job to love them. Now, a lot of women find this a bit difficult because they feel that it skirts on the kind of precipice of mothering their children. And it's an edgy place because there is a fine line. It's very different. Loving is very different to mothering. So loving your partner doesn't mean picking up their clothes all the time. Loving your partner means recognizing that when they leave their clothes on the floor again, that maybe they've got a lot going on, that they mean the best, and that think of all the other wonderful things that they do, or ask them to pick up their clothes again. Even say, that annoys me that you've left your clothes on the floor again. But remember that you're loving them. Make it your job. Look at that person with eyes of God, that they are just this beautiful, innocent, kind, loving soul that may have lost their way a little bit, and keep loving them. The crazy thing that happens then is that often their behavior changes, because just like any human being who is in an environment of unconditional love, a miraculous healing occurs, and that person starts to respond and behave in very healthy and maybe even new ways. But the really interesting thing is that once you start loving as your job, their behavior becomes far less significant. So if you're feeling really frustrated with your partner, I want you to remember that you're not the only one. It makes sense. Remember, the house of open enemies. So they're going to highlight everything inside of yourself that you're not okay with. And if you want to see those aspects and deal with them on a psycho-emotional level, and find your triggers and do some processing and some healing, then I highly encourage that. However, I'm recommending something to you that's going to be almost like a bypass to healing over that, and more importantly for this particular post, a way to heal your relationship and use this opportunity to take your relationship to the next level. Because if you can do that at the moment, do this in the moment in isolation, then when we're in our new normal, you're going to have fortified a whole new strength and a whole new type of relationship, and that is to love them. To make it your job to love them. Forget about being loved, forget about what you're getting from them, and just how can you love them more? I'd be really interested to hear from some of you who this resonates with and who start to try it. And I'm really open to people's opinions and questions and sharings of how it goes. So please do share with me. And I mentioned the other thing that I'll be talking about, and I'll talk about it next week, is can you be on your spiritual path and also be in a relationship or have a family. So, you know, being an adept and a householder at the same time, you know, these are some big questions that I know a lot of us in this type of community have. I've journeyed with this on a very personal level in a really big way. I've had some very interesting experiences, which I'll share with you in the next post, and we will get to the bottom of it. But for now, remember, let your job, and I'm doing it too, my job is to love my partner. That's my job. And let's see how it goes. Let's try it together. See you later.